I am basically a psychiatrist working in the area of yoga out of interest rather than, I'm not a yogi, so if you ask me to float in the air, I can't do that. So have realistic expectations from me. But I'm very happy to be here, and I thank Bryce and Geshe Lakdo for inviting me here. I have been to Serajay, but never to this place, so I'm very happy to see a lot of young kids in the audience. So what I will be focusing on is the use of yoga for mental health. The first slide that you're seeing actually has a picture of the Mysore Palace, which is quite close to Serajay actually. And this is during the Dasara time it's lit up. It's one of the landmarks in Karnataka where I come from. So we all of course know that prevention is better than cure. If you can prevent a person from having mental problems, it's much better than treating him once he or she has the problem. So the real focus on yoga should be in your age group, children, rather than once the person has already developed a problem. In fact, in Karnataka, the schools, the government has made it mandatory for all schools to have a yoga teacher. All the private schools already do. Some of the government ones still don't have it because the lack of yoga teachers, but the rule is already there, because if you can prevent people growing up with the wrong upbringing, you can prevent a lot of mental disorders. I just put this slide up to show where some of our inspiration comes from. The other person in the photo along with His Holiness is Professor Gangadhar, who is the head of the director of this institute where I come from, NIMHANS, the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. We met His Holiness around 2 years back in Serajay, and what His Holiness told us is that the research on yoga and meditation is now predominantly being done in the West, in the United States and other places, because the Indians simply aren't doing it. So he said, you should be the people. India has been the guru for Tibetans, but if the guru is now confused, then the student is even more confused. So he said, no, the guru has to show the way, so Indians should do the research. So that was the sort of inspiration for us to go into meditation, because we haven't really done much in the area of meditation. We've been looking at the other aspects of yoga a bit more pointedly. So if you look at the effects of yoga, I hope many of you have heard of yoga and know what yoga is. As I was discussing with some of my friends from Denmark and Sweden in the institute, many people think of yoga as a purely physical practice in terms of asana, but it is much more than that. In fact, Patanjali, who is the pioneer of yoga, of the Ashtanga yoga, in his Patanjali Yoga Sutra, talks only about the mind. He doesn't talk about the body at all. What effects on the body are a sort of necessary step before you go to the mind. So if physical, everybody knows about it. If you do yoga, your flexibility increases, your coordination gets better, you become stronger. But more importantly, the mental is what we call as stabilization of the mind. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha basically means that the mind jumps from one thing to another, and yoga helps stabilize it. This is the definition of yoga as given by Patanjali, sage Patanjali. And if you can see the NIMHANS logo, the Sanskrit part in the bottom says Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, which basically means yoga is equilibrium. This comes from this Bhagavad Gita, which says Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya Siddhi Asiddhi Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Vichyate, which basically means, this is of course Krishna's discourse to Arjuna in the middle of the war in Mahabharata, where Arjuna didn't know what to do. because he had to fight his own uncles, his grandfathers, his cousins, and he was stuck in a place where he could not move forward or backward. And then Krishna says to him, look, action should not look at the result of the action. It is for you to do the action, the result is not in your hands. So you should not be attached to the results of the action. Your job is to do the action. And whether you fail or you succeed, you should treat it the same way. The famous writer Rudyard Kipling much later wrote about it in the poem If, where he says, if you can treat success and failure the same, both are imposters, then you will own the world. That's what Rudyard Kipling, but that's thousands of years later. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. For example, the simple saying Om is a very strong effect on the brain, and that's something that I'll be talking to you. This was recognized by John Woodruff, who said the Om says a lot of things in just one syllable. And this is a research that we have done in NIMHANS. When people say Om, there is a particular method of saying Om where the M part is expanded, and when you say M, you get a vibratory sensation in the ear, and this stimulates a nerve called as the vagus nerve. That's one of our most important nerves in the body that controls the heart, that controls the breathing, that controls the parasympathetic nervous system. So the simple act of saying Om changes so many things in the brain. What actually happens is, as you can see in the MRI scan, this is a functional MRI image, what it shows that the areas in the brain that control emotion, our most primitive system called the limbic system, which is responsible for rage, hatred, anger, disgust, jealousy, those areas actually get less blood flow and they calm down. This is what happens when you say Om. It's very similar to another pranayama which is called as the Brahmari, which is the sound of a bee. It's very similar. So when you do that, this is what happens in the brain. Now, I'll now come to what is the therapeutic use of yoga in mental disorders. All of you, I'm sure, would have heard of depression, which is the most common psychiatric disorder. Schizophrenia is a more severe disorder, but less common than depression. Then, of course, the disorders of the modern age, what you can call alcohol, drugs, anxiety, and very importantly, with the aging population, when we age, we tend to lose our memory. Some of them, of course, going to dementia, but all of us, as we age, become more absent-minded, we lose our memory. So can yoga help in that? And the other end of the spectrum is children. What can yoga do for children? So first let us look at depression, which is the most common psychiatric disorder. This is a research done by Professor Gangadhar in the late 90s and early 2000, looking at a form of yoga called as the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. This is taught by the Art of Living Foundation. Sri Ravi Shankar, maybe somebody of you would have heard. He is a spiritual guru who comes from Bangalore. He has the Art of Living Foundation. They teach a particular kind of yoga which emphasizes on fast breathing, almost hyperventilation. And what this shows is that in people with proper syndromal depression, who otherwise have to either take medicine or electroconvulsive therapy, what we call as a shock therapy, a course of Sudarshan Kriya Yoga was almost as effective as medication. Shock therapy, of course, we use only when everything else doesn't work, so it was clearly superior. And the other things, you can see here, yoga and the medicine were almost the same in terms of improving depression. This was one of the first studies that used yoga alone as a form of treatment in depression. This is a more recent study, a thesis done like you do your Geshe or PhD. A student did his thesis looking at people with depression. Some took medication alone, some did both, took meditation and did yoga, and some did yoga alone. And as you can see, the yoga group also improved to some extent better than the other two groups. So this proves that yoga alone can work as a treatment in depression. And of course, like you're taking your medication every day, you should do yoga regularly. You can't simply do yoga once in a month and then expect it to work. So what we have found is if you do it at least 4 days a week, it has a definite benefit in depression. Now, how does it work? This I'll come to a bit of detail later, but very simply, there is a chemical in the brain called as brain-derived neurotropic factor. I realize it's a bit technical, but then I'll try to put it as simply as I can. What this chemical does is improves the ability of the brain to repair itself. Now, what happens in depression and many mental disorders is that the brain loses some part of its ability to repair itself. The brain is affected by many things, stress and other things where it becomes a bit damaged, but it has the ability to repair itself. What yoga seems to do is to improve this ability by increasing some of these chemicals. And the other side of the story is there is a chemical called as cortisol, which is called as the stress hormone. When we are stressed, the cortisol goes up. When you do yoga, it goes down. And it seems that there is a connection between these two. The cortisol goes down, the BDNF goes up. So the stress goes down and your ability to repair your brain goes up. This is what happens when you do yoga. So if I were to summarize, I would say regular practice is a treatment in depression. It seems to improve brain functioning. It lowers stress hormone and it improves the ability of the brain to repair itself. Now schizophrenia is a much more severe disorder in which people lose sight of reality. They are unable to distinguish what is true and what is false. They hear people speaking to them, they hear voices, they think people are trying to kill them or trying to harm them. So this is a very, very severe illness which affects around 1% of the population worldwide. So although it's not so common as depression, you can see in India 1% means 1 crore. It's 10 million people. So it's not very uncommon either. And this causes a lot of hardship to the patient himself, his family and society, because these people are not able to work, they're not able to do anything in their lives, so they lose, and it starts in the 20s. So the person's prime of life is destroyed by this illness. So what we did is, this is again a thesis done by one of our students who worked with us. What he looked at is people taking medicine. The only treatment for schizophrenia as of now is antipsychotic medicines, which are good but then have a lot of side effects. So what we looked at is adding yoga to this, what would happen. So we looked at 2 groups of people. One group did yoga, the other group did a regular physical exercise, what we are taught in the schools in India, the physical training or the PT, so just to compare. And what we found is actually that the people who did yoga improved significantly more in what we call as the negative symptoms. These are schizophrenia has 2 major kinds of symptoms. One is what I was telling you, they hear voices, they're afraid, they have fear. That we call as the positive symptoms, which should not be there in a normal person. The negative things are things which should be there but are not there. Say, for example, the motivation to meet people, to work, to have a family, to do your work in the society, that goes away in schizophrenia. So that we call as the negative symptoms. That significantly improved in these people after they did yoga. And of course, as a result, your quality of life improves. And this is the difference between yoga and exercise. The people who did yoga were 5 times more likely to improve than the people who did exercise. The other thing that improves is what we call as social cognition. Now what is this? I think we were talking about empathy in the morning. Empathy is a part of social cognition. Social cognition means the ability to understand other person's emotion. So somebody is talking to me, I see that person, is the person angry with me, upset with me, happy? The ability to recognize that is a very, very important thing for all of us. If I'm talking to my boss and I am not able to understand whether he's angry or happy, I'm likely to make a lot of mistakes. So the people with schizophrenia lose this ability. So they tend to misinterpret everybody as being angry with them or upset with them, even if they are neutral. So we use something To test that, we use videos and photos to show them the emotion, the navarasas, what they are called in the Hindu tradition, the 9 emotions. We show them a photo or an image or a video, and they say, this person is upset. So we do this inside the MRI machine, and so we see what happens in the brain when they do that. What we saw is that the people, after doing yoga, their ability to recognize the emotion got significantly better. How does this happen? There is a hormone called as oxytocin. This is the hormone that makes us bond, the mother and the child bond because of oxytocin. It also is the hormone involved in milk secretion by the mother once she gives birth. So it's a very, very important hormone in the body, and when people did yoga, their levels of oxytocin go up. It might be similar when they interact with dogs. I don't know, Sasha might do some research on that, but when we bond with another person, the oxytocin goes up. The same happens with yoga. So if I were to summarize, I would say that in people who are already on medication, doing yoga leads to an improvement in the negative symptoms. It also improves social cognition, and oxytocin may be one of the biological mediators. Now this is a slide which I use in many of my presentations. The person on the top, of course, has had too much of beer, but the person on the bottom is a very, very influential guru of yoga, BKS Iyengar, who recently passed away at the age of 94. He was one of the most influential teachers of yoga in India, the Iyengar school of yoga. Why I put this slide is to show how you do something is as important as what you do. Because you can see the posture is not very different, but the mindfulness part of it is what makes the real difference. So when we take people who are suffering from alcoholism or have alcohol dependence, when they do yoga, what tends to happen is that most of these people are depressed, and they turn to alcohol as a therapy, which actually makes the depression worse. Now when they do yoga, the depression tends to improve, and again the cortisol, which is a marker for stress, also reduces. So a similar thing that happens in depression. What about people who have anxiety? Again, people who do yoga improve in anxiety, and it also improves their ability to control their heart rate, their respiratory rate. Generally, when you're anxious, your heart beats fast, your pulse is faster, you feel anxious because of the physical reactions of the body, and that improves dramatically when you do yoga. Now, like I said, maybe this 1 or 2 slides, all of us live in populations which are rapidly aging. What happens when you age? The centers of your brain which control memory become smaller and smaller, specifically a part called as the hippocampus. Now, mild cognitive impairment is a stage before you get dementia. Once you get into Alzheimer's or other dementia, it's very difficult to treat. If you can intervene at the point before they get into dementia, maybe you can do something. So we tested yoga for 6 months in a healthy people otherwise who are living in elderly homes in Bangalore, old age homes. And when we taught them yoga for 6 months, their memory improved fairly dramatically, as did their quality of life, and very importantly, also sleep. So quality of sleep went up very much in the people who are doing yoga. There was no other thing going on, so all of them lived in the same place, ate the same food, had the same environment, but one group did yoga, the other did not. So this was a study, again a PhD done at NIMHANS. And very importantly, although this is a very small subset of that population, what seemed to happen in their brains is that the hippocampus actually became bigger. Now this is a remarkable thing. Of course, there's recent evidence from the United States that in long-term meditators, the cortical thickness actually increases, which is a very, very remarkable finding, because it was not thought possible a few years ago. And the other side of the story, if we can intervene in children who have autism, autism is again a disorder where social cognition and empathy are absent. They simply cannot understand what's happening with the other person, but yoga has shown some preliminary evidence in autism and mental retardation, and especially in something called as attention deficit hyperactivity, which a lot of children have. They can't concentrate on one thing. Yoga can help those kind of children. Now this is the last section of my presentation. How does yoga work? Most important thing is you learn yoga from a teacher, from a guru, and you imitate the guru. And then you are mindful while doing that. So the mindfulness is the most important component and not the contortion of the body. How you do it in a relaxed manner. Asana, for example, Patanjali's definition of asana is Sthiram Sukham Asana. It is something that you can comfortably maintain for a period of time. It should be comfortable, it should not cause pain. So if you do it like it's supposed to be done, you activate what is called as the mirror neurons. These are neurons in our brain which get activated when you see somebody else doing an action. So I see somebody holding their hand like this, the neurons which would make me do this get activated, even though I may not be doing that action. Those these are called as the mirror neurons. They are like reflection of what goes on, and this seems to get activated when we do yoga. So this may be one of the mechanisms that leads to improvement in these people with schizophrenia, because it is known that in schizophrenia the mirror neurons actually activity comes down. Right, so I would end with the last maybe 2-3 slides. So yoga seems to improve mirror neuron activity, increase oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. This seems to lead to improvement in social cognition and therefore the mental health of these people, especially with schizophrenia and other things. So Om chanting itself can quieten many brain regions associated with emotion. Yoga is an effective therapy in many psychiatric disorders. It improves cognitive functions and also may increase gray matter, and the mechanisms may involve the mirror neuron system, the hormonal system, and the neuroplasticity, or the ability of the brain to repair itself. And I should thank all my collaborators and my superiors or my teachers in NIMHANS, as well as His Holiness, who came to NIMHANS in December 2015 and delivered a discourse there, again urging us to look at yoga as a science and not as a mystic practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now request any questions from the monastic graduates to Dr. Varambally.
Comment.
Yoga ki jang ne talong tu gom ne musubo detang yong da sim jibo yong reis ke chi mo chi da reis den chi chi so na chu ni chi na yang xin ne da lan dong san sim gom ne yang hong ma le subo detang yong da sim jibo yong den chi chi da chi yo re ti ni na chu li shi da san je ke song we shi ba de da da yoga ni shi bi ni kare ki chi mo zu yo 네 텐데 요가 때 검도가 양우가 되라 되니 주소로 지대바이나 뭐디 그 샘그 댕니 섬노 가르탄 거고 요레스 디투안 이레.
So my question is, in yoga tradition, you have this methods to improve your physical body and also physical health and mental health. In Buddhist tradition also, when we talk about the importance of doing meditation and practicing compassion, we also say that it has positive effects on our physical health and mental health. So from your point of view, which could be more effective? And second part of the questions, in many of the yoga positions, you are sitting kind of in a upright position. And when you have that kind of physical position, what is the thing that one normally meditates upon, or where one focuses their mind?
So, like I said, the concept of yoga from Patanjali is Ashtanga Yoga, which has 8 limbs, like the Buddha's 8 limbs. It starts with yama and niyama, which are basically rules about how to live your life. What you should do, what you should not do, like cleanliness, respect for other people, compassion. These are all the basic steps for learning yoga. So yama and niyama come first. So then comes asana and pranayama. Asana is the posture, pranayama is the science of breathing. These are the first 4 steps. The 5th step is pratyahara, which is withdrawal from your sensory world. So you go more into yourself. These first 5 are called as bahiranga yoga, which is what the outside world can see. You can see me doing asana, you can see me living my life in a particular way, you can see me doing my breathing in a particular way. The last 3 are called as antaranga yoga, which is for you going inside. So these are dharana, dhyana and samadhi. So dharana is concentration on an object. It could be Om, it could be a god, it could be a sound. You concentrate on an object. So that is dhyana. Then you go into the next step, which is objectlessness. You concentrate on nothing. You are able to move past this object to a state of nothing. You concentrate on nothing. And samadhi is the last stage where you merge into the cosmic consciousness. So in answer to your second question, I would say you start by focusing on something that you like. It could be an image of a god, it could be a sound of Om, it could be an image of Om, or it could be the Buddha. It doesn't matter. But ultimately you have to move beyond that to a state where there is nothing needed to concentrate upon. That is the next stage before you reach the final stage.
Tanda kilang korang khalai dus labim bena ani len thangpudi ani dus je konzo yoga dus dev kapsula ani sozo chindi du zambala ani samlu nang khar gum gu yore sto cheta ani dik lenge gins cheta ani tanda ani konzo gu yoga sigin re chalung tung korsi ata tanda pradhan jali sig do konzo dik lu shisha shevim bena ani ko dela rimba dumasa we ges chishya yores ta dinde ki rimba ges rodan di peche nangju khu nanglo la ani chikba yores cheta thangbu go ju du zaman konzo khara asna ani chik lai do konzo khal lai ris la vim bena ani chik ani choba khidang ani chik Suzuki Mila Manuya Kandas Gore, Mila Kushab the Demba Kandas Gore, Asia, Tinzuki Ritinzu Yores, Niwa di Konzu Postulate Sambala, and Konzu Gom Gave Capsula, and Dedan Kandas de Gore, and Luke Tantap Sigro, Tinzu Kandas Gore, the Call Shigris, the Igela, and Konzu Karshigris Lavimbana, and Uton Lank Kola, Ukandis Tangores, the Call Shigris, and Niwa di, and Chiga, the Konzu withdrawal Lado, Chica Chiki, any Sorwat Sigunare, Chiki, any Chica Kujin, Tenzo, any Manuva Cheche, any Nang Mipasu Nang Teche, any Gumgu Resi H. Yores. Just that Denzuki Ridenzu, any Manchi Kunzu Candice de Uyemeta, Uton and China, Denzu Nanglone, Kashing and Miki, Tontobia, Chilon, Tedu Sambako, in this Chik do some Yores. Just that dig Jella, any Sum Yores, just a Dick Harris Lavimina, Dostene, Toyamigoti, Dilla Sambala, any Gom Gavicapsula, Koranki, Mikba Candice, Digame, any Denzu call Shigores, Dikonzu, Tapeje, Dingins in the any Chiame, Sines, and the Legus, Tanya Pejuchina, Engine, Tanya Chipa Pejuchidua, Chesa, any Tamunga, any Comiaj Gores, Chesadi, any Kena. Om told some Om Chibula, did some down in a degree, and the Tombek Gom and degree, Suzuki game Gom and degree, Karina Gumgeres. Just a deal me by using Botavim, but not how much can I say colleague Slavim Bena, and the Dendeki, any chick, you make what such a rubber chick Moova Tony, any Kaya Meva, Comias, Dende, Jungures. Keza, any Dende, Comias, told Lesona, and the Tamakana Tobja, and the Konzokara Samadil and Shine, some speech, and the Dende, the Langton, Dende, and Tobia. Yores.
Jodon Naruto Nombig Norco, Zango, Truncos at the Mombuchi Ganyora. Inayo, the Shekina, the Sosochi Sanjibuyon, the Lutebuyon, the Ligue Halia Yongre. In the same Mahika Gayon, the Ligue Nagatonigo, Yon, G. Saint Jubumia, Saint Yon, the Devumeba, no Jich, Lula, Kazakana, no Jack, the Ligue Mombiora. They in the yoga Jongona. Yoga noni ngarutochi zaza seka sekoro tachi tendi go no ni ko korugo pembali no ba chewa njwa yora tendi ko so nyaka seka se chehyunda o tendi kande yores tendi twai.
In Buddhist traditions we also talk about yoga And we also talk about benefits of yoga if you can do it in a proper way. But in Buddhist tradition, we also talk about the negative parts of yoga if you don't know how to do it. So if you don't have enough knowledge about how to practice yoga properly, then it can have negative influence over your body and also mind also. So is there any kind of similar views from your tradition? And if yes, then what are the ways in which the wrong way of doing yoga can harm you, and what kinds of harm or negative things can happen at a mental and physical level?
Yes, I think this is a very important point, which is why we always stress that yoga should be learned from a guru. Many people try to learn yoga from the internet, from YouTube, or from a book. The interest in learning is good, but unless you learn it from a guru, it could affect you differently from a lot of other people. There are reports of people breaking their neck while trying to do yoga, as simple as that. But there are also reports of people who try to do things like Kundalini yoga, for example, which could have opposite effects of what you're actually trying to do. It could make you more violent, more aggressive, if you don't know how to control that energy. So in the yoga tradition, what they teach is the guru will assess you and teach you what you need, depending on the level at which you are at. So the guru is very critical. Learning yoga without a guru is like going to a chemist shop and taking medicine from the chemist. Now the chemist gives you the medicine, but the doctor has to tell you which medicine. It's exactly like that. Otherwise we wouldn't need doctors, we all would need only chemists. So it's very important, and in the yoga tradition, the place of the guru is very, very, very important. Just like in your Buddhist tradition, you follow a particular lineage or a guru. The person who teaches Kundalini yoga, the person who teaches different kinds of yoga, has to do an assessment of the student. How ready is the person to learn? Is he capable of handling what is going to happen when he learns? Is a very important thing.
Ani kyun yores ya dinzo ani nganzu ke dugres di dewa yimba sonza nganzu namgyu khalagres labi mana kesi kena yoga gya yimbimbi na ani khadu yimbi ne ya ani gigenji san yangu res ya di ani nganzu keshin buchin shige yores ta tingsan yimbimbi na ani jiga logdev da taja da dinde gyune ani 대체 아니 단다 요건 양년 된데 요레스 제가 된데 양두 삼바 양마시 위kapsla 아니 강에 망부 용구 요레스 강에 나론 다 지당 강에 셰비면은 배샤나 아니 지금 징바 차소에 소로 된데 지당 마시 위치 징직 로데야 소로 다 된데기 아니 강에 망부 용구 요레스 제가 딜라두 삼발라 아니 케침부시 우지 요레스 바이키란조기 아니 단다 낭베기 숑리 임빈빈나 아니 지가 된데 기겐디 자침부지 로와스 디가나시다 수수 라기 da chike dinde gigin gom gigin di ane tenya nashi manju gi tanda yoga knalo chi vi mena ane susu lama di ane chashim bu chi hiu chi res khajin la mena lama di ke ane loma di ane yoga che khandesh le vi mena ane ko ringdu la vi mena takta chai du ane di tagi tagi che gu yor ma to ane khangju manju ane labgi mares dik yoga di gigin mewa che che ane yoga chi vi mena di kharda da res la vi mena membe ki ene me thotik do kharsa go me di madi wache che ene mengang me nyoga do do che yores cheza dila du sambala ane pene me khong ju mo nyu na ane ta pen no chi ro tin shi ane gegen ki ane kiran lamdu chi me wala ane yoga che bi na pen no che yores diga na che lung ki ane yoga komdang mangbu dinde yoga dinde komdang dinde ane mandi wi be na di ge ane sem tu do ya da kang yung pe mangbu yores
다지다 다단디 자롱 중고라 때네 되네 샘라 아니 대화 용야 통통이 펜토 요리스 다sonso 다지다 가서 나온초 기도는 지나 지다 다샘 대화 토야 돼 소소그 남도다 녀몽바 다다탐지 바방 토바다 대주장 된 소샘 시와 용스 되는 종요라 지다게 자롱 중고 되는 나온초 나라 송요래 이냐 다다 가서 지다게 담 만로지 소소게 아니지 동아라 하창 침보 요비 값을라 되네 샘 그토 랍자된 게 메라 아니 소소 류종 짤롱 찍볼래 되네 달라지 대화다 아니 디게 토네 시대스나 든드 디토게 레베스 디토지.
So even though in Buddhist traditions we talk about importance of doing yoga for mental and physical health, but we pay more emphasis on mind and doing meditation. Through meditation, we believe that you can achieve better results, or ultimately, like all these negative emotions through which you get this surfing and problems can be cured only when you pay focus to the mind. So, from your tradition, if which method you pay more weightage? Kind of, is it doing yoga has more weightage, or doing meditation has more weightage?
Actually, meditation is a part of yoga. Like I said, it is the stages. The physical stages are a preparatory exercise for going to meditate. You have to train your body or discipline your body to able to meditate well. That's the teaching in yoga, that you go through a series of stages where initially you train your body because that's easier. For an untrained person, training your body is much easier than training the mind. So it's a preparatory exercise, and then you go into meditation. Meditation is the ultimate aim. Like I was talking about Patanjali, if you read Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is the Bible of yoga, there is nothing about the body. It's all about the mind. What yoga does to the mind is what he writes about. But to get to that state where you can meditate, you need to have some discipline. That's just what the asana and pranayama get you to that state where you can meditate. From psychiatry or neurology, how we look at it now is that there are different circuits in the brain. We used to look at the brain as different parts of the brain. Now we realize that it is not just parts, it's circuitry. So there is a circuitry for emotion, there is a circuitry for empathy, there is a circuitry for memory. Everything is a circuit. And the more you activate a particular circuit, the better it gets. So to get to that stage where you can use your circuitry for meditating, you need to do these other things as a base. It's like building a building. You have a foundation, and then you have the building. The physical part is the foundation, but the building is the meditation.
Di tanjingi gilawa nangshi res. Nganzu yoga sidu sambala luyon chaya chipu sigi yo mardas. Yoga siya dik nanglo la ane gom chaya di tsudi yo res. Nganzu tanji ane jiga luyon chaya ribinzu udong le chaya soro da ane jiga luki ta jiga lujezaya rik mangbochi. Tenzu sangma khares la vimbe na tame ki mi ane gom di ane yakbo yonya ki chedu chaya yo res. 제가 딜라도 삼발라 페차샤나 아니 콘주기 탄다 요가기 아니 타 자위기 슝도 같은다 퍼전젤리 룩시야 집 딘주고 나노라 아니 루종치야 딘주 콜라 자와니 시고라 요 말레스 상마 아니 곰게 딘주 짱짱 콜레스 제가 이나야 아니 곰게 디 약보지 용알라 아니 온주기 차신지 가창고 요르슬라비베나 아니 수부 내단데 조 약보 구구여와다 아니 지 루종치야 딘주 아니 개침부 차요르스 제가 디 온주기 차신리 디 안주 남주기 통대야 그 차도 차요르와스 이나 타메미 유디 마레 타메미 유디 아니 샘 토네 아니 곰게 디 개침부 차요르스 다 안주기 탄다 아니 곰기 요가기 아니 냠내 딘주기 토네 아니 룩다 샘기 트렌레 펜단 삼로 칸디스 땅기 요르스 라빈베나 베샤샤나 지 안주기 아니 샘기 칠레 샘줄 그릭 딘주 임베네레 디가나시 지 아니 템바다 디가나시 아니 지 셴기 아니 네단 하고 토베크 누바스야 딘주기 릭 딘주 녜마 임베나 레베케 네기 차셰 디기 지기도 페기 지기도 삼야 딘줄라 아니 토나 조 지 요르스 탄다 아니 네도 조 마임바 디기 낭로라 아니 데와 요베키 원제기 짤람 카르카르도 제가 덴졸로 토나조 체그레스 짤람 덴조 아니 라가 구용도 잠발라 자와 구용도 잠발라 아니 콘주기 아니 튜든조야 야르치 튜든조 야르치 두 잠발라 아니 콘주기 자와 체토비아 그 느베 세두 아니 토르토르 레잉교레스 제가 덴데 아니 곰다 덴데 토니 카르치교레스 라베나 아니 네주 카르 곰비나 디기 아니 자 자와 체 그네단도 느바든조 아니 야르게 줘야 용구요레스
Okay, we have to close the session now to move to the next speaker, but I'd just like to add that this last response that Dr. Varambally made and which has just been translated would also answer this question from you, which is on whether the practice of yoga, which is well taught, it could change the mindset or restore the emotional balance, which causes decisions for self-immolation, because that has been something that has been happening in Tibet. And I think some of these young people are perhaps concerned. So I think the last response helps you to understand the level or the kind of emotional balance that can be restored by yoga, both in this Patanjali tradition as well as in the Buddhist tradition.